There was an update from the CBC and other mainstream sources in the Jack and Lily case in regards to things that they didn't find when they brought in the cadaver dogs. I found it interesting. The, the, the part I found interesting in this circumstance is the reporter from the CBC fact-checking Daniel Martell's claim of the dog handler speaking to him, and she acknowledged that statement and asked the detective from the Major Crimes Unit in Nova Scotia about it. Just in passing, but here you get a good view of how these people talk in generalities, meaning the RCMP. It's what you would expect. He wants to let us know that the investigation hasn't led up any, and the public has reasonable grounds to be suspicious. There's a lot of realistic concerns out there on behalf of the public, and he's absolutely right. Let's have a brief listen.
But I'm not entirely sure of exactly the technical things or the technical kind of terms to use associated to why.
Volatile organic compounds is what he would be referring to. The question is, from the reporter, over the possibilities of the dogs not picking up decomp. Well, we first have to know what they are actually picking up, and it has to do with VOCs given off by a body who has died. But it takes time for these compounds to develop in the system in order to be left as trace evidence. So in this circumstance, with what we've learned so far, it's more than likely that the time between something happening to Jack and Lily potentially, meaning their death, and their disposal time, there wasn't a great amount of time between there, and nor could they be. It's not like they were laying there that we know of passed away for 12, 14 hours. But, how did we really know that? We suspect that at this point. Based off of Daniel Martell, Malaya's statement, Janie's statements, their deception. Going with the thinking that something happened between the hours of 9 p.m. and midnight, that small time window, if the kids were deceased or passed away during that time, it's very easy to be careful in that circumstance, especially when you're the guilty party. Wrapping them up, it's not like he was storing them. He had to get them the heck on out of there. He had to move, bury, throw in the ocean, submerge underwater. He had a selection of choices there on how he was planning to get rid of them, which is sad and morbid to talk about, but it really is needing to be talked about. You can understand the RCMP giving an update, and that's fantastic. But the decomp dogs and the dogs, to people when they hear it and they follow along with the information that's given on mainstream media, really are a lot dumber after the fact than they were going into it. It wasn't a Hail Mary pass. Nothing was hinging. People have every right to be suspicious of the people who last saw Jack and Lily alive, who don't want to commit to really talking about what they think happened in this circumstance, and they avoid at all costs. And it has absolutely nothing to do with what they talk about in these BS articles that you see on mainstream media, wanting to talk about how social media is so toxic and they're borderline criminal for stating their opinions based off of the information that they are dealt. Everything on this channel and the reasonable thought out there has to do with the information that comes directly from the mouths of those who are involved in this case. Why is it the RCMP and the CBC play like this is the only show in town, and all they do is get up there in front of a camera and talk in generalities and really irrelevant information? That's misinformation in the first place. You're not actually talking about anything important because, of course, later on in court, because they're government entities, because these media companies dictate really what you believe at any one time, because they're in control of the information. They don't want to take the risk of going after one person even when they look suspicious. They have to be above that. They have to make it look like they're so unbiased when in fact it's just ridiculous. It's an act. This is why the PR officers need to be trained in order to talk in generalities and you know, be able and be good at dodging questions in real time. And you understand that. We all understand that. It's easier for an officer, and it's a lot better to just acknowledge what it is that you can't talk about. I'm not even saying this particular RCMP officer is bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just venting frustrations with all of you out there over where we are in the case. But we don't expect much from the RCMP. You know, they're not our saving grace in all of this. At the end of the day, they're the ones in charge. But you can't expect them to be having a dialogue publicly about all of the suspicious things by way of the individuals that were last seen with Jack and Lily.
They wouldn't have got seen or how something could be found in the area, but regardless, they could be tucked away in different areas. There could be anything that could have caused an odor not to be picked up by the dog. But again, to our best practices and the training.
So they take all of this time to discuss the dog, and it's, who cares, dude? Why not talk about it in an educated manner with the audience? They're taking up all their time talking something down, and that's what's frustrating, the BS that's involved in this. Listen, just talk about the volatile organic compounds and tell them what it means. They can put the next together in their minds. Just because somebody dies in one, doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to smell of decomp, especially if you pick them up right away and put them in the trunk of a car and move them to another part of the province. It's interesting that Daniel indicated early on about all of the sweaters, right? These cops aren't dumb. The investigators in the background aren't dumb. It's a bit of a trap. We got to find something to talk about today. He wants us to know that they're still just going so hard at this case, it'll make your head spin. Oh, Jesus, this is our tax dollars at work. We paid this guy to lie to us and bullshit us. But it's just part of the job. Jesus.
Being an expertise of our PDS handling unit, we feel we've exhausted the area as best as we can.
Really, there's no way you could say with 100% certainty.
There just isn't a way I could say with 100% certainty. There's the reality is we're dealing with nature, and things could happen that we don't understand right now, and
at the end of this, when we find out what and where Jack and Lily are, we'll pick up from right there. I'm sorry, I got a little bit of a hiccup in communications there.
When we find out where Jack and Lily are and bring them home, then we should have those answers and understand better.
How many days were the teams on the ground?
I believe it was around 3 days that the teams associated to this.
So you'll notice as well, it's worth mentioning at this point that all of the conversation is surrounding that particular house and home. Not that that's an indicator, but it's really not part of the problem at hand, because the person would have left the property, could have left the property. We have an eyewitness testimony and hearing the vehicles leaving the property 6 times in those 5 hours between midnight and 5 a.m. And I believe him, by the way, personally. I don't know about you at home, but I believe him. Absolutely. But they want to maintain, really, they're asking such questions that it's probably not relevant. It is, because it was the last place that Jack and Lily were seen. But the way they describe it, going back and painting the premise for a new audience reading these articles that they publish, is painting really falsehoods, in my personal opinion. And that's a real problem. I can't respect that at all about people who are practicing journalism. It used to be about bringing up questions and questioning things in that sense. They're taking the information that's presented to them more like it's fact, as in, the kids being at home in the first place. But it falls in line with just parroting what it is that the RCMP were told. It's important that they frame where they are or how it was presented and how they have to deal with it, because they can't rightly, the kids are missing legitimately. They have to deal with it and rule things out. It's most logical to go and search for them in the bush, even though nobody believes that they're in the bush. You still have to rule these things out. You can't be there 20 years later wondering, bringing in the cadaver dogs. Really, how do we know that he didn't store the bodies hanging around in a crate and was really sloppy and the cops just overlooked it? You can't do that. So they're going to go back through at that point in time and rule the possibility out. If he is storing the body, if there is evidence around there, the decomp might be washed away. It might be covered up. It might be getting more powerful, depending on what it is. When you don't know, you have to rule these things out. So, nonetheless, this officer has the great job of sitting in front of this camera and talking about things that really aren't directly related to anything in the investigation or what they're suspicious of.
Particular search, and they searched roughly 40 kilometers of area during that time.
And what do you mean by 40 kilometers? Is that?
Well, they do, again, I'm not a PDS dog handler, so I can't talk about all the specifics, and I wouldn't talk about all the specifics related to an investigation, but in general, they run certain search patterns, and they do, certain techniques and drills to kind of put the dogs out there and do the searching. So to say exactly how that looks, but they covered roughly 40 kilometers of area during the 3 days that they were searching. It covered all the areas that we felt were relevant to our investigation.
Did they search inside the trailer?
I would have to get back to you for specifics on that, but they did search in and around the property.
Whoops. Like she's actually pretending to be, scrutinizing the RCMP there. She's leading up to talking about this with Daniel, this conversation that the dog handler had with Daniel, because she's steering the questioning in a different direction. And it has to do with why the RCMP are suspicious. You know where that's going to eventually go, right? Does a good job dodging this.
I wouldn't be able to answer for sure right now. I could quickly find them. We'll get Stratcoms to find that answer, but I'm not sure if they went inside, but they did do the whole property around and the area around there, the pipeline trails, where the pink blanket's at, and then intersecting paths and areas. So.
Did one of the handlers question the children's stepfather, Daniel Martell?
I can't comment on what was said between Mr. Martell and the dog handler. That's really not something I'm aware of or have knowledge on.
Well, so I get to take that as an acknowledgement that it actually did happen. Maybe there's some truth behind the statements that Daniel said. I like that they brought it up, though.
I don't have any comment there. So,
would it be common practice for a dog handler to question people?
It wasn't questioning. Well, now you're mixing up the terms. It's not a session of it. It's not an interview or questioning. He's just talking to the individual in passing. Isn't it?
Who are involved in investigation?
There may be circumstances. I mean, I'm not sure that there's strict protocols on talking or not talking. I mean, when a dog handler, and maybe not protect this circumstance, but if you show up somewhere and you need to use a dog, you would probably gather some information to help you get that started. So there could be reasons for sure for PDS to be talking to somebody at the scene to get the information they need. But again, there's no solid and fast rules on that. So yeah, there may, they may talk to people when they deploy, when they may not. So.
Given there were no human remains detected and that these were locations that were the highest areas of probability, is there any other possibility of cadaver dogs being brought in again?
Absolutely. If we have information or evidence or facts that suggest that there'd be benefit to bringing in whatever resources available to the RCMP, we will look at deploying that resource when it's relevant, pertinent, and beneficial to the investigation. So if there were information or anything that we needed to do or an area we needed to cover again or anything like that, then we would look at bringing them back in and having that done.
What happens now?
Now we continue on with our investigative work. Nothing stopped from the second day of this investigation when major crime took carriage and began collating and sorting and organizing the information and planning the investigation. We haven't stopped. We've talked with a number of people. We've got over 1,000 taskings that we're still creating new ones and developing new areas to gather information from. We've reviewed over 8,000 videos, thousands of hours of video from the area, and we've done an extensive ground search using both technical capabilities, partner agencies, GSAR, DNR, to as thoroughly as we possibly can search the area around the home and those other areas that I mentioned. And that if we continue to gather information, make decisions based on that, and if those information suggests that we need to do more searching, we will.
So the investigation hasn't let up since May 2nd?
No, it has not let up, and it won't. This is not something that we stop working on. We've got 2 young children, Lily and Jack, who've gone missing from their home, and it is a Missing Persons Act investigation still at this time. But we need to find answers to that. There's a lot of legitimate public concerns about how 2 children.
Exactly. There's a lot of legitimate public concerns over how 2 children can just disappear in that sense.
Go missing and we can't find them, so we're going to continue until we have answers.
RCMP have been conducting forensic testing, including on the pink blanket that you mentioned. What can you say about what results came back or what we know about the forensic testing?
Of course, I can't say much about the details because it's part of our investigation and there's a process we go through, and we don't want to put out much information. But we've been working with our National Laboratory Services to have the DNA testing done and to get any type of testing related to this investigation in as timely manner as possible.
It's been at least a week since the dog handlers were on site. Why is there a lag in informing the public of what they didn't find?
Well, I'm not sure about.
What? What? Why was there a lag in the period of time in sharing the information over all of the things that they haven't found? It's almost like you understand the question, but could you phrase that in a little? So it seems like a double negative almost. It's like, how am I supposed to prove? What would be the point on issuing statements over something that you haven't found in that sense? He's doing that essentially right now. We're updating you. We're giving you an update. It's so confusing for your mind sometimes with these individuals. What?
The lag, we put our information together. We wanted to make sure that we provide accurate information to the public, and both that and some availability to be able for me to be able to come and talk to the public. We wanted to make sure that I had that availability. So there was some delays about that, and we didn't have.
Yeah, he was on holidays. Dude was on holidays. He's got to fit you into his schedule, dude.
Immediate information that we felt was going to change or collect evidence for us or change the direction of the investigation. So we felt we should maintain an organizational approach to this and make sure.
What's important here is that there's the conversation. It's not necessarily any of the information in the conversation. They just provided an update, just the conversation.
That we're prepared to provide the information we have and set up these QAs. So that's a bit of the delay, but basically there wasn't immediate information we felt we needed to share with the public, and that we would take the time to get our messaging in line and set up the meetings like this. So
you're a major crimes investigator, and yet this case.
I don't know about that. I don't know if he's actually even a part of this investigation or not. It doesn't sound like he's really up to speed on many things. And why would you put him in front of the camera if he was expecting to be let in? It's almost like she's continuing to present it as though we should be, knowing all of their key details. You know he can't answer certain things, so why do you continue to press him? To make it look like you're at least trying? It's just so disingenuous, this whole process. We'll have a sit down and we'll have a little personal talk. That way I can be a little bit more personal and tell you the same things that I would have said otherwise in a normal press conference dialogue. Maybe it was just cheaper this way for them. He just shows up, it's cheaper. I get it. It's just cheaper to have a sit down with you and put it on her cell phone. Dude does look a little bit like Ricky from the Trailer Park Boys, though, in a suit.
Is being investigated under the Missing Persons Act. Is that still the case?
Absolutely. Yes, it is, under the Missing Persons Act. One of the things that major crime brings is the ability to collect, manage, collate, organize, and review large volumes of information using some of our standard practices on information control and management. So when you have a file like this that's large, we do support an investigative capacity. So there are other areas that sometimes major crime would support an investigative capacity. Larger incidents that maybe aren't necessarily the specifics of major crime, but they need that extra added boost for file management, information management, and things like that. So we do support different areas like that, but we are the lead on this investigation because of the large size, the volume, and our ability to interconnect different parts of the RCMP to kind of understand what their capabilities are and bring to bear on a given situation. So that's part of the reason why we remain involved in the lead in the investigation.
So to be clear, it's currently not a criminal investigation.
No, it's not. We don't have any. We haven't collected evidence or facts or information that suggests criminal investigation or charges or anything like that at this time. So we are still investigating a Missing Person Act.
The news release today mentioned your.
That is such garbage. Like, it doesn't matter. Oh, so it's actually this and not that. It's a mind shake. Why do you keep bringing that up and suggesting that there's nothing criminal about two children simply vanishing It would suggest that there's everything criminal about it, but we'll label it a missing persons case because that's how it was presented to us, and we have got no evidence to alter that, to steer it in a different direction. It doesn't mean that they're not suspicious. It doesn't really actually mean much because they're still at a point in the investigation where they're still gathering information. How much more do you need there, guys?
Or exploring all possibilities. I think a lot of people are wondering what the possibilities are here.
Yeah. Of course, I can't talk about our investigative theories and our direction, but part of the role of being an investigator is to be unbiased and collect information and fact and make decisions based on that. So we continue to do that, and we will continue to do that until we have the answers we need to bring Jack and Lily home.
What would you say to...
Yeah, do you think that's going to be happening anytime in the near seeable future there, tough guy? Holy Hannah.
Members of the public, members of the family who really want answers?
What I would say to them is that we are grinding as hard as we can to get those answers for them. We want the answers as much as everyone else. We're family people. We have children, we have families, we're aunts, uncles, grandparents, we're everything, not a grandparent yet, but we have the same connections to our communities and our families as everyone else, and we understand the concern. We are concerned, and we are, working hard to gather all the information that we can to get the answers to bring Jack and Lily home, and we won't stop that.
Well, that's a better answer. You should have opened up with that. You should have opened up with that RCMP. You need to speak more from the heart. That was the best question answer session yet. That last little period right there. Everything else, crap. But I did like the ending.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I would like to, thank the public for the cooperation and information that they have provided.
That sounds like Daniel, or maybe Daniel sounds like him.
I would like to just identify that if anybody does have any further information or facts or evidence or anything that they feel could assist us in locating Jack and Lily, to please.
Yeah, there, officer. I'm going to give you one that you're going to give everybody else, and I'd like to ask you what you believe happened to Jack and Lily in this circumstance. Do you have the balls? Do you have the picenaries to offer up an intelligent answer to this question? I think not. He's not here to theorize. He's not here to speculate or give away the farm or say something stupid. He's here to remind us that he's a family man too, and don't think too much into anything. Don't overthink things out there. They have to remain unbiased and make it look a certain way, especially in front of that camera, to really be competent investigators. No, that's good enough. I don't like these generalities, though, telling everybody how hard they're working. It just seems so ridiculous when there's seemingly nothing being produced. But of course, you have to do things one step at a time, which is incredibly slow to the outside world when we're so thirsty for information. And many of us have come and formed opinions, of course, and are emotionally attached. But make special note that none of this is equal to Daniel Martell or Malaya or Janie being innocent of anything. One thing doesn't mean the other. And that's really an issue and a problem and a giveaway that Daniel Martell has been making the entire time. He should have straight up acknowledged how suspicious things looked, but he never does. He avoids it at all costs. Daniel, Malaya, Janie, what is it that you think happened to Jack and Lily? taking a look around the news of the day. On Jack and Lily, I noticed that there was a bit of an error by way of the National Post. Now, how stupid can you guys be? Let's go have a look. Let's see. Let's scroll down a little bit. Hey there, look at this. Inspector Luke Reddy and his police dog Narc. That stands for narcolepsy. Maybe the dog was sleeping. Let's see. So maybe Daniel was being truthful in his statement. You know, that screenshot, that grab about him talking about what this constable was saying to him. Special salute out to you, Inspector Luke Reddy, and his police dog Narc. Let's see. Narc and Kit. Let's see. I have to go find it. I got to find the screw up here. So here we can play this game. Not that I found it yet, but here's an interesting statement. Cadaver dogs did not find the remains last month of 2 young children who went missing more than 5 months ago from their home in rural northeastern Nova Scotia. I like the phrasing. So really think about what that rules out, what they're saying there. It rules out the fact that they just wandered out voluntarily to their fate in the bush just close to their home, which is how they wanted to present it to 911 dispatch. That's a big conflict. That she wanted to present for the world that 2 possibly autistic kids, possibly autistic. They're either autistic or they're not, honey. Okay? 2 possibly autistic children walked out and they're known to wander. Really rules that scenario out. This is really what the detectives look at. Well, we can rule that out. They just didn't walk out into the bush and fall down and die of exposure. Or they would have found them with the police dogs. They would have been on the surface and easy to see, easy to find. So therefore, we know the bodies are almost 100% not on that property, just as we suspected. It's a validation to really a different theory in that sense. It doesn't equate to Daniel Martell, Janie, and Malaya being innocent in this circumstance, free of any guilty knowledge. It fits along the line, and it fits in with the eyewitness account from the neighbor. Shout out, Justin. Justin Smith is his name. About hearing the vehicle come and go 6 times in those 5 hours, in the early hours of May 2nd, 2025. Something that Daniel has shown all kinds of avoidance and sensitivities around even discussing. He wants us to believe that he was fast asleep, hard asleep, never woke up once during the night, have all kinds of inconsistencies around when they made it home that May 1st evening, to checking on the kids, an adapted story over time. In fact, he didn't even give an accurate account in the moment of his previous day's activities, couldn't remember anything, was speaking from what we suspect to be experiential memory from days previous and meshing them together and calling them Thursday. A very important statement here. I'll give the RCMP this one. Staff Sergeant Ron McMahon. The probe has multiple prongs, said the release. Each piece of information, including the results from the search teams, helps inform our next steps. With support from agencies across Canada, the investigative team is working to validate or eliminate leads and follow the evidence wherever it takes us. At this stage, and as we've said all along, we are considering all possibilities. We will keep going until we determine with certainty the circumstances of the children's disappearance, and they're found. The children were first reported missing by their mother, Malaya Brooks Murray, at 10:01 a.m. on May 2nd. See, this is an inaccurate depiction. Brooks Murray told police she believed the two children had wandered away from their home in rural Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. Police arrived 26 minutes later. Another small interesting quirk: searchers scoured the area around Lansdowne Station after the children vanished. Police dogs were employed early on that can pick up human scent, including that of recent remains, which are cadaver dogs. They're trained to pick up decomp. So what's so specialized about the other dogs that they just brought in? Might be specialized in decomp that's further along. Or searching older remains or deeper or something. So the dogs that were tracking could also pick up, or they were separate dogs at the same time. I'm confused. Searchers scoured the area around Lansdowne Station after the children vanished. This is May 2nd, those searches. Police dogs were employed early on that can pick up human scent, including that of recent remains. Human remains? Deer carcasses? What? But last month marked the first time specialized cadaver dogs joined the hunt for the missing kids. What makes them specialized? So here's where things are wrong. Jack and Lily's family mobile home sits along a gravel road surrounded by dense woods. They're not on a gravel road, idiots. They're on Garlock Road, and it's paved. It's a secondary highway. Like, how does that all of a sudden make it into these stories? How stupid does the idiots writing these things have to be? Maybe it's written by AI. It almost seems like an AI-like mistake. See there? Malaya reported her children, Lily and Jack, may have left the residence and were missing. She said they were both possibly autistic and were known to wander. She said their boots were gone. Malaya reported them missing at 10:01 a.m. And the dispatched information reported to police arrived at 10:27 a.m. You know, what's interesting about the neighbors' statements as well is how they acknowledged them. They completely avoided them. They had to. You'd think that if they were genuine in their concerns for Jack and Lily, that neighbor's statement about hearing vehicles come and go 6 times in the course of 5 hours might be of interest to them, and they would have focused on discussing it even further. But they want to deny, and it's completely made up and false by the neighbor in that circumstance, when indeed it's most likely 100% factual. He's got no reason to lie in this circumstance. He's got no reason at all to lie. But they want you, meaning Daniel and Janie, to think that he's some sort of scofflaw nutbag who's not to be trusted, like a jailhouse confession type of thing. As opposed to taking what it is that he said and saying, well, how can that not have something to do with Jack and Lily? The neighbors reporting that some car was here and gone. We need to further inquire into that, as opposed to, oh, this dude's just crazy, because it comes a little bit too close to home, doesn't it? It opens them up for further, more accurate, detailed questioning. And they don't want to do any of that. Malaya provided 4 statements to police. 2 statements were provided on May 2nd, 2025, the day the kids were reported missing. 1 on May 3rd, 2025, and 1 on May 4th, 2025. The following is a summary of what she said. On the day Jack and Lily went missing, she heard them playing in the other room and was going in and out of sleep. Lily came in the room around redacted a couple of times. Daniel was sleeping the whole time and didn't really wake up. She didn't hear them anymore around redacted. So she got up and they couldn't find them. So she called 911. The police came and got statements. Everything was frantic, searching for them. Malaya did not think this would take days. Malaya discussed what happened earlier in the week. The kids went to school on Monday and Tuesday, but Wednesday was a professional development day, so they were off. She kept them home on Thursday and Friday. Malaya said she doesn't remember what they did on Wednesday. Specifically, she gave a detailed description about what happened on Thursday. Malaya kept Lily and Jack home from school on Thursday morning because they had a cough. She contacted the school through an app at 6:18 a.m. The kids got up and came into their bedroom. Meadow was already up in bed with Malaya. They got up and headed out to get the kids breakfast. They wanted the TV on and they wanted to play with their toys. Everyone woke up around 9 a.m. What does heading out to get the kids breakfast mean? In a vehicle or out of your bedroom into the kitchen? Malaya said she tidied the house throughout the day and looked after the kids. This is Thursday, according to Malaya. She said she also scrolled her phone at one point because she was overstimulated. She had redacted in New Glasgow in the afternoon on Thursday, and she and Daniel went with all of the kids. They drove her 2017 white Nissan Pathfinder. They went to the big stop for gas, and she thought they might have gotten the kids bagels at Tim Hortons. Daniel stayed in the car with the kids when she got redacted. Then they went to a Starbucks drive-through before going home. In the evening, she was going to do some cleaning, but she was too tired. The kids were watching a show on TV. She put Lily and Jack to bed first, then Meadow, and then went to bed herself. Malaya said they were late getting to bed that night and went around 9 p.m. They usually go around 7 p.m. Lily was wearing a pink sweater and pink pajamas with white shapes and a Barbie top with pink socks to bed. Her hair was shoulder length and her backpack was beside her. Jack was wearing black sweatpants and a t-shirt and a diaper as he was only partially trained. Daniel stayed up. He said he was going to clean the house for her, but it wasn't clean when she got up, so she doesn't know what he did. Normally, he did little projects tweaking around the house at night and fixed things. Redacted. Except for the front door, right? Malaya said she was not woken up throughout the night and does not know when Daniel came to bed. She continued by giving detailed description about what happened on Friday. We'll skip over the Friday part for now. Scrolling down, because I like to get this part in succession because there's an adaptation to the story, aka further details or updates after the fact, after the initial statement Malaya gave. So Malaya provided a fifth statement to Constable McIntyre on May 9th. 7 days, a Friday after the kids were reported missing. The following is a summary. Malaya again recounted what happened on Thursday night before the kids went missing. She said she put Jack and Lily to bed and then went to bed with Meadow. Redacted. She continued to what happened Friday morning, which was the same account she provided in her previous statements. Interesting how so sharply the story is for Friday, but everything else is just an obscurity. It's very bizarre. Which was the same account she provided in previous statements. In addition to what was already said, she provided the following new information. She said when Daniel was looking for the kids, he opened the front door. He put a wrench on top of the door the night before and it didn't fall down, so Daniel said they must have gone out the back sliding door. Note, Daniel is telling her what the kids have done. The door was shut, but the kids would normally leave it open if they went outside because it was so heavy. There are times when they would close it. Malaya said Lily and Jack did not normally wander on their own. They would if redacted were there, but not by themselves. Malaya said she had a conversation with Janie in the yard and told her the kids were missing. Janie got ready and went to look for them. She told Malaya she heard them outside playing and Daniel yelling. Malaya said she does not think she opened her phone or sent any messages around that time. She did call her mother and her grandmother after she called police. She said she used Text Plus because it allowed Wi-Fi calling. She since deleted the app because she doesn't need it anymore. She did not use Text Plus to call 911 because it does not let you. Malaya said during the day, Daniel had erratic behavior towards the police officers, she thought. He was very standoffish, and Daniel thought they weren't doing enough. He's erratic because he was tweaking, allegedly. Malaya said she was up late on Friday night. She put Meadow to bed and then stayed up. Daniel came in and just went to sleep. She thought he was tired from searching all day. She said she only got a couple hours of sleep, and it was after 3 a.m. on that Friday, the last time she checked her phone, and she was up again around 6 a.m. Constable McIntyre asked Malaya to look on her phone to confirm her timeline for Thursday, and she provided the following information. At 6:29 a.m., Malaya received a message to confirm the kids were marked absent from school. Malaya said it was a slow morning. They didn't do a lot other than get breakfast, watch TV, and play. Malaya had a video call from her mother, Cindy, at 3:37 p.m. on Thursday to see the kids. Malaya says Cindy would have seen the kids on the phone. But did she? Malaya went through and showed Constable McIntyre her banking transactions on Thursday to see if they could narrow down the timeline, but she said Daniel used his card for the purchases that day. Malaya showed Constable McIntyre her Google Map timeline, which tracked her movements. This is on Thursday. She went to the following places. They left home at 12:10 p.m. and drove for 39 minutes. Then from 12:49 to 1:27 p.m., Malaya was shown at a missing visit, which she thought was her redacted. They went to Dollarama at 1:44 p.m. She said she went in and grabbed a few things. They went to Lawton's at 2:48 p.m. She remembered they picked up some Tylenol and diaper rash cream for Meadow because she was teething. They drove between 2:52 and 3:11 p.m. and arrived home. That Thursday evening, she got the kids something to eat, she says, and they were watching TV. I wonder what they had for dinner. She said they might have gone outside sometime to play, but they came in when it was getting dark. She got their teeth brushed, and they wore their clothes to bed because all of the clothes were still in the bags from when she washed them at her grandmother's house, and she hadn't gotten around to putting them away. In the last couple weeks, Lily and Jack were hyper and excited, but she got them tucked into bed at around 10 p.m., which is an hour difference from her initial statement. Jack had his blanket and his dinosaur, and she shut his door. Redacted. Lily went to bed with her backpack. Another paragraph redacted. Malaya and Meadow went to bed. Once Meadow was asleep, she put her in her crib and went to sleep herself. Malaya and Constable McIntyre looked at the Google Map timeline for Wednesday. On Malaya's phone, she learned the following about her day. The whole family left the house at 12:51 p.m. Wednesday and went to the Irving Oil in Westville where they got $20 of fuel. They drove to Malaya's grandmother's house and arrived at 2:01 p.m. on Wednesday. That's Patty's house. At 3:18, she was at Access Nova Scotia in Truro Heights with Meadow to get a plate for her car. Daniel and the kids stayed at her grandmother's house. They went to the Ultramar in Millbrook to get gas, and she stopped to get a vape for Daniel at High Grade. At 7:54 p.m., they went to Walmart and picked up groceries. The whole family went together. That's an hour past the kids' bedtime normally, isn't it there? They stopped at Redacted in Truro and then went to her grandmother's again at 9:19 to drop off her bank card. At 10:19, they arrived home for the night. On Wednesday, you got home at 10:19 p.m. Malaya provided more background on their living situation. All redacted. There's a couple interesting conversations going on from the video I uploaded yesterday, where we briefly went and revisited Wade's statements on that tint video. American says, so Cindy enabled the abuse by ignoring it and waiting on Malaya to leave. She waited too long if that is the case. And I asked American, do I think that that's influencing her silence here? And I meant Cindy's. I'm not sure if that was communicated properly in this statement, but I wondered if Cindy's silence in all of this is partially to avoid any sort of public scrutiny in that sense. There seems to be a common theme of putting people's personal interests before that of their children in this scenario. It's just how it seems from afar. Poop responded, no, I don't think Cindy had any options after offering to move her out. You can't control grown-ups. She may have contacted CPS herself, perhaps. You know, I can see the argument both ways. It's a difficult situation. One that you don't actually ever think that the worst case scenario is going to happen in your case until it happens, you know, Murphy's Law. And you see these things and your mistakes after the fact. You only wish that you have known certain things. But, you know, it's difficult with family. It's just Sheila says, why is it Cindy, being a nurse, did not contact CAS? As a medical professional, she is mandated. How do you know she didn't? To report such things, even if it is her own daughter. This family is just going too far, or this family is just far too calm and quiet, in my opinion, which leads me back again to the kid being alive and living somewhere far out of Nova Scotia. I doubt that. I'm taking my thumbs up back. Yeah, I don't see what point you're trying to make there, Sheila. And how does it fit in to the kids being safe and sound at this point in time? I'm just going to fucking remove that. Spam. Coop 6835. It's just Sheila. Very likely contacted CPS. They're incompetent. That is why they ended up with this mess in the first place. How is it their mess? How is it CPS's fault over what happened to the children? They should have magically known about these things. They should have known. They should have just opted. What makes you say that? That's what I want to hear. Peter Witherspoon says, it's possible that she did. I know that the government here took a keen interest in that CPS file once this became a big media story. It looks like they're preparing for flack if that file ever becomes public. Why would that file ever become public? When have you ever seen a government file about specifically children in a family environment ever become public? Never. I do appreciate this Janie Doe 1408's comments. According to the redacted docs, Malaya got 5 statements, or gave 5 statements to the RCMP on May 2nd, twice, May 3rd and May 4th, and May 9th. Daniel gave 3 statements, May 2nd, May 4th, and May 6th. On Friday, May 2nd, in the redacted documents, 19H, Malaya said they, her and Daniel, discussed what happened earlier that day. Malaya said she went to the police command post to see what was happening firsthand. She's speculating, was she losing control? Or speculating that she was losing control. I don't know why it's a question. In your opinion, says Janie, because May 3rd at 12:45 a.m., Malaya called the RCMP to report Cody might have picked up the kids and taken them to New Brunswick. RCMP showed up at his place at the Sullivans at 2:50 a.m. and confirmed that they were not with him. On May 7th, they spoke to Cody again because a tip said he had been seen by a hotel employee in New Brunswick. Once again, they confirmed he was home in Nova Scotia. So that tip from a New Brunswick hotel employee, that is so random. It is, isn't it? Did Malaya know he was back home at Belinda's when she called the RCMP at 12:45 a.m. on May 3rd to report Cody that might have them or might have taken them to New Brunswick? Was Cody living in New Brunswick before he moved back home to Nova Scotia? I don't think so, was he? Would the RCMP have provided her with feedback later in the day on the 3rd when they sat her down for her 3rd interview? Just what everybody else gets. Speculating, it may be maybe why a hotel employee then called in another New Brunswick tip on the 7th, saying they spotted Cody at their hotel because she had since learned his address was now in Nova Scotia. I don't know about that. Given the amount of interviewing the RCMP were doing, it appears Malaya was sitting in the hot seat. Cody took them. It's Daniel's fault. In my opinion, the lady doth protest too much. Also, there's a saying that goes, every finger you point out, 3 point back at you. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Well, this response from Peter Witherspoon, listen, Malaya, or Daniel, has been the one that's been pointing fingers since the very beginning at Malaya, as a form of coercive control from afar, perhaps. We can only speculate because we don't know them, but we know the behaviors, don't we, Peter? The question is, has she hinted or alluded that Daniel is responsible? It does seem like Daniel is starting to point his finger at her. Starting? He's been doing that. He's been doing that since day one, since the get-go, and he's actually stopped pointing fingers at this point because there's no more questions for him. Do you know what I mean? He's trying to avoid pointing fingers at this point in time. He was already doing it. But it's just observations, right? He's always been doing it, is the answer, Peter. Yeah, he's been pointing all of it, trying to paint the suspicion onto Malaya since the get-go. It does seem like Daniel's starting to point his finger at her, as his team of supporters have been doing this for quite a while now. That is an interesting observation. I seem to recall Darren Getty suggesting a while back that the kids might have been moved out of the province. Yeah, Peter, these were the initial BS claims from the family, sourced from Daniel and Janie, through Darren Geddes, who was made an early spokesman of the case, a person who had all kinds of relevant, pertinent information, all kinds of insight into the case that made himself look so suspicious. Nobody trusts him anymore, Peter. We don't bring up anything that he talks about because he's a liar. He's a bullshit artist. Cassandra says, was the Cody accusation tip made before Malaya left Daniel? Could it be possible he pressured her into phoning it in? I would say that's a strong possibility. Janie's response is, Cassandra, it's complex. The kids went missing Friday morning, allegedly, May 2nd. She called the RCMP at 12:45 on May 3rd. She left the property with her mother the afternoon of May 3rd. Daniel said he had no idea she called in that tip. So I would say no, Daniel didn't pressure her into it. Just my opinion. Janie responds to Peter, the last thing she said to Daniel as she was leaving the property was that it was all his fault. Daniel said they, her family, accused him of doing it. She went to bed before him on Thursday night. He said he went to bed around midnight. He also said he checked on the kids after midnight. The thing is, they were sleeping in the same bed Friday morning when the kids wandered off. She marked the kids absent shortly after her 6:15 alarm, so we have to assume she saw them then. To make that call, and subsequent to that, both said they saw Lily pop her head in the bedroom. And they heard Jack in the kitchen. Doesn't mean that they were actually there. That doesn't mean it's actually true. JD heard them playing on the swings and laughing after Ron's 8:48 a.m. call when she was in bed. Malaya said she heard silence and she woke Daniel and told him she didn't hear the kids. So if we're going by Malaya, she was up first but went back to bed. Then the kids were up. She was dozing. She said she heard the kids playing in the room, saw Lily pop in. Daniel was uppish, saw Lily, heard Jack in the kitchen. Daniel fell back asleep. Insert Janie hearing the kids on the swings. Then Malaya heard silence. That's a red flag. And woke Daniel. Daniel, I hear silence. Darren Geddes suggested Malaya's Micmac family had the kids on the reserve somewhere. But that's not the case. In my opinion, that was just that was what their status announcement was about when they went missing. If Malaya did that, granting Lily and Jack's status meant they could legally intervene on behalf of Lily and Jack, assume the file, and keep them out of the provincial foster care system. As they did not surface and the missing persons case is ongoing, we can wholeheartedly assume First Nations do not have the kids with their in their custody. Janie's saying there's a tripartite agreement between the federal government, provincial government, and Nova Scotia Micmac family and Children's Services. MFCS can formally request files of First Nations families in crisis and assume the role of Provincial Child Welfare Division. Through the agreement, they have the delegated authority to administer the act in the same manner as the provincial court counterpart. That's interesting. Listen, it's wrapping up. We're getting over an hour. I'll be back on the next video. Let me know what you guys are thinking about this update. Where are we at? Where are you at? Let me know in the comments section below, friends. Peace.